I blocked my father after he destroyed my apartment during an argument. Years later, he showed up claiming he had the right to name my baby and threatened the hospital. My dad always had anger issues, but I never thought he'd actually destroy my home. Growing up, he'd punch holes in walls when mom would question his drinking, but he'd never touched me directly. I thought I was safe once I moved out. I was 23, just moved into my first apartment after saving for 2 years. It was tiny but perfect, my sanctuary. Then my dad found out I was dating Elias, a guy he disapproved of because he had tattoos and rode a motorcycle. Classic judgmental dad stuff. He showed up one Thursday night, already 3 beers deep from what I could smell. Started with the usual lecture about my choices, how I was throwing my life away, how Elias was probably a drug dealer. I tried to stay calm, told him he needed to leave. That's when he snapped. First, he grabbed my laptop, the one I'd bought with my first paycheck, and hurled it against the living room wall. The screen exploded into a spider web of cracks. Before I could even react, he flipped my glass coffee table completely over. The sound was deafening, glass shards flying everywhere. I'm screaming at him to stop. Neighbors are probably calling the cops, but he wasn't done. He punched a hole clean through my kitchen wall, right next to the refrigerator. His knuckles were bleeding, but he didn't seem to notice. Then he grabbed my favorite mug, the one my grandmother gave me, and smashed it on the floor. "This is what happens when you disrespect your father," he yelled before storming out, leaving my door wide open. I called the police immediately. They showed up an hour later, looked around, took some photos, but ultimately said it was a family dispute, and there wasn't much they could do since he was technically invited in initially. The damage cost me $2,800 to repair. Had to get the wall patched, buy a new laptop, replace the table, deep clean the carpet. I was broke for months. That night, I blocked his number on everything. Changed my locks the next day. Didn't speak to him for 3 years. Then I met Alina, got married, and we decided to start a family. I was 8 months pregnant when the calls started. It began with my husband getting calls from random numbers during dinner. Same voice every time. My dad somehow got our contact info through my Aunt Lenora, who I guess felt sorry for him. The first call, he was almost sweet, asking about the baby, saying he wanted to be involved. But by the third call, his true colors showed. "I need to know which hospital she's delivering at," he demanded. "As the grandfather, I have legal rights to name that baby. I've already picked out names." My husband hung up immediately. We thought that was the end of it. 20 minutes later, there's violent banging on our front door. Through the peephole, I see my dad, red-faced and furious. He's screaming that he's going to every hospital in the city, that he'll tell them he's the father so they'll let him in the delivery room. "You can't keep my grandchild from me. I have rights." He's yelling loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. Alina's crying, I'm having contractions from the stress, and my husband's on the phone with 911. But here's the really insane part. While we're waiting for police, my phone starts ringing. It's the maternity ward at Meridian Hospital. Apparently, my dad had already called them, claiming to be my husband, trying to get information about my delivery date and room assignment. Then St. Cecilia's called. Then Riverbend Medical Center. Then University Women's Hospital. This man had systematically called every hospital in a 20-mile radius using different stories each time. Sometimes he was my husband, sometimes my brother. Once he even claimed to be my doctor ordering a room change. The nurse at Meridian said he'd been particularly convincing, even knew my maiden name and approximate due date. He told them there was a family emergency and he needed to know exactly when and where I'd be admitted so he could be there for the birth of his child. When the police finally arrived, they found him sitting in his car outside our house, on the phone with Children's Medical Center, trying a new approach, claiming I was a minor and he was my legal guardian who needed to consent to medical procedures. The officer who took the report said in 20 years of police work, he'd never seen anything quite like it. The systematic nature of the calls, the multiple false identities, the elaborate stories, it was like something out of a psychological thriller. That's when I realized this wasn't just anger or control issues. This was something much darker. He'd turned stalking his pregnant daughter into a full-time job.